Hello everyone. So today I decided that I would talk to you guys about this game I'm working on, and I would just sort of, start a devlog series. So yeah, I've been working on my dream game, and it's in Unity, and you all know what that means. All the chaos that's going on has kind of put my game in a really precarious position. I'd sort of planned to release a video about this at the end of the month, about my game I mean, and then this whole Unity runtime fee thing was springed on top of us, and it kind of has put me in a really weird position where I don't know if I want to keep using Unity, and I've kind of started exploring other game engines. But before I go into all that dark stuff, let me just show you what I've made. So I've been kind of just working on mostly just the character controller. I have a character as well. Her name's Stella. She's a bunny, as you can see. And she's also got a sword and a shield. And of course a backpack. But she can't really use her sword and shield right now because I just don't have the animations for them yet. So let's press play and I'll show you what she can do. Right now I have a bunch of animations set up. I have a very tiptoey walk. I have a walk cycle. I have a little jog cycle. And I had a run cycle. This current run cycle I'm not particularly happy with. It needs a bit of work. But I had a previous run cycle that was much better. Stella has a variety of different jumps. Just so we're clear, her entire moveset is based on a game that is my primary inspiration for this game, which is Jak and Daxter. So she can do a jump. She can do a double jump. She can do a crouch to high jump. She can do a ground pound. And then she can also ground pound to high jump. She can also do all the other moves that Jak can do. So punches, spins in the air. And then she can chain all those together with a punch, spin, or so I guess punch, uppercut, spin. She can also do a roll into a crouch or just directly into a... That shouldn't happen. I guess I'll need to fix that. She should be going directly into a standing animation. But she can also do a roll jump. I've got a bunch of other things, so she can kind of punch under these little corridors. And she does it into a roll. And then also if you go underneath here, you can't stand up. So I'm not holding the crouch button down. I also have some doors set up because the second inspiration for this game is Zelda. And a little bit of, I guess, Prince of Persia, God of War, just general sort of action platformer style games. And if I stand on the switch, it opens the door. I also have a bunch of other settings where I can have it hold so that if you stand on it and then you get off of it, it closes the door. But if you put an item on top of it, it'll stay. Or for instance, there's a timed one, so you stand on it, you get off of it, and a timer counts down until it closes. And then also you can stand on it and then it doesn't do anything, but you can do a ground pound and it'll activate it. I also have these blocks that you can push around and some animations tied to that. I need to sort of figure out the wall collisions because they're kind of jittery, but I don't think that's going to be too hard. You can also stack them. And the cool thing about stacking them is that you can actually kind of stack them infinitely high. This is obviously not something that I'm going to do in the game because it just doesn't make sense to make it stack infinitely high, but it's something that you can do, and it's something that I kind of wanted to incorporate into puzzles. And then the last thing, you can't see it because I don't have the UI for it, but Stella has an inventory. And so if we just come over to this comically large chest, open it up, you can see I got a test dungeon key. So that's actually in her inventory. It's a scriptable object. And when I come over to this door, I can unlock it with the key. And you probably noticed something very interesting about that door, is that when I actually walked up to it, the camera changed focus. And so there's a volume here that actually dictates where the camera's going to be. So the camera's currently following a camera rig. And then if I walk into here, the camera's following, I guess, another camera rig that's specific to the door. And it just follows the player through the door. And then when I leave the volume, it just goes back to the third-person camera rig. I was also working on the main game itself, which would be a sort of demo of like what I want to make that I was planning on releasing closer to the end of the year. I'd started working on constructing some levels for it, and then the Unity news struck and it kind of put me in limbo. So I guess now would probably be a really good time to talk about all the Unity stuff and how this has affected my project. I guess the biggest way it's affected my project is in my mood. Things are really uncertain right now, and I kind of feel like this has taken the wind out of my sails and made me wonder if my project is actually as certain as I had hoped it would be. There's still a lot, of course, to consider. I don't think Unity's dead. I don't even know if Unity's something that I'm going to drop altogether, just to see this kind of behavior from the higher-ups at Unity. I just don't really want to be sort of working with a software that is this chaotic, I guess. But the reality is it probably will never affect me. I mean, hypothetically speaking, 200,000 downloads is probably really generous. So it'd be really great to do that, but, of course, that the problem is the runtime fee. So I'm hoping to reverse it, and if they reverse it, I'd probably just continue working on my game inside of Unity. But as of right now, I'm just kind of shopping around other game engines to kind of have a look and see what's available. So the first one is called Flax Engine, and this one you can see is pretty similar to Unity. I actually watched a video tutorial on how to create a character controller, and that was also very similar to Unity. One thing I will say is that it seems like this is a very good, viable alternative to Unity for most people's uses. But for my specific uses, this is something that kind of doesn't work as much as I'd like it to. So you can see with this model, Stella's eyes are bulging. And that's actually normal. If I just open up the blend file, you can see how Stella's eyes are supposed to look. Her eyes are kind of oval shaped. And if I just solo the eyes, you can see from the top that they're kind of squashed along like a sort of angle here. The reason why this is happening is because I've set it up inside of the rig to do that. Essentially, these are the eye bones. So what you have here is you have the target in the middle that's pointing to this focus. The focus drives the target, and then these two eyes will copy the rotation. But because it's only additive, I can actually still move the eyes around. These bones here, this is the parent, and there's another one called the scale. The scale is locked, but the parent is basically copying the scale and the rotation of the scale bone. And then the eye is parented to the parent. So you get this cool effect where you can actually see it in the bone. The bone is kind of skewed, and the eyes themselves are kind of skewed to fit the shape that I want out of this model, which is, perfectly fitting. But what this also means is that when things don't actually look right, so her eyes bulge, which is fine. So in here, the only thing I need is to make sure that whenever there's an animation playing, that the eyes don't bulge. And when I press play, the eyes have adjusted, except they're not adjusting at an angle. They're sticking out of the side here. And the reason why that is because the scale isn't being applied with the parent in mind. It's taking the scale from the parent and applying it to the local scale of the child. Whereas in Blender, what's happening is the child is scaling within the local space of the parent. And so whenever the parent scales, the child inherits that scale and it gets skewed, and we get these lovely results here. So this kind of is a deal breaker for me because I need this to look right. I want it to look the way it looks in Blender and also in Unity. Alright, so a little bit of an update post-recording. I created a suggestion in the thread of the Flax Discord server, and it basically explains everything that I explained here in the video. I know I'm going to be asking for too much here because I'm basically asking them for them to properly implement basically the ability for us to do bone transforms and have better armatures in our game engines, but that is possibly a pipe dream. Anyways, so I made that suggestion to them. This is one thing that kind of wins me over with Flax, because I like that they actually have an active community where the developers are actually talking to the users and everyone's helping each other make the game engine better. So if that's something that you like, this may actually be the game engine for you. There's a handful of things that I really like, a handful of things that I don't really like. One I would say is the navigation. I think Unity and Blender have navigation figured out. And if the developers are watching this video, you guys should study what Unity is doing in terms of navigation, and also Blender, because Blender is probably, in terms of navigation, one of the best softwares I've ever used. I really like that the character control has this prevent climbing and force sliding non-walkable mode. I don't actually know what that does, but if I'm correct, and it forces the controller to slide on a sloped angle, that would save me so much time in terms of making character controllers. And so that's definitely a plus. I also really like how all of the materials here are just like how they are in Blender, where I can basically, this is the material, this is the shader essentially, and all I have to do is create a node tree that flows into the material. I do like how Unity does stuff, but the way Unity does stuff with creating a shader and then creating a material from that shader is just not as flexible as this. I don't know what that means for performance, but this to me is something that I like. And yeah, so that's Flax Engine. So the other one is Unreal. And as you can see, I'm actually using like the sort of ray trace global illumination. As you can see, the eyes are doing the exact same thing that they did in Flax Engine. Here I have all of Stella's stuff, and similar to Flax Engine, I actually really like the way this works, the shader works. So I can take, for instance, her body texture, drop that in here. I can delete the parameter. Since I'm kind of going based off of like a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 style look, I can just go parameter, and instead of a vector parameter, is it scalar? Yeah, scalar parameter. And when it's 0, it has no specular highlights. And then I can just save that, and voila, her textures are on her face. So that's really cool. So let's look at the idle animation. And as you can see, if we zoom right into the eye, it's not as, if I can actually do it, it's not as bad as in Flax Engine, but it's still quite bad. You can still see it sticking out over here. And it needs to not do that. So when I look at Unreal Engine and when I look at Flax Engine, these two options are off the table until they can sort of figure out these import settings. Because I spent pretty much the entire day today, it's Saturday the 17th, the entire day today just messing around with import settings in both these softwares, and I made no progress anywhere else in terms of like trying to figure out how to do stuff. If I can't even get my character to import correctly, then these software, at least for me, this software is off the table. I just want to say, keep in mind that I'm using non-uniform scale for my bones, and I'm trying to use a lot of squash and stretch in my animations, and these are things that game engines are not normally good at handling. Don't look at these softwares from my perspective if you're looking for something else, because quite frankly, both of them are pretty good options. And if you want something like Unreal, it's actually a lot simpler than I thought it would be. I kind of just started bringing things in, and with Flax Engine, it was a little bit more difficult, but eventually I got there, and eventually I figured out what I needed to do. And so, yeah, both of those are viable options. Both of them are not for me. So finally, I haven't really tried Godot. This whole experience has kind of soured me to alternative engines as well. And if I'm being honest with you, I kind of don't want to stop using Unity. I kind of want to keep building my game in Unity because it's where I started. It's what I know. It's like I spent so much time learning Unity. I pretty much know how I'm going to make this game. There's probably going to be a few things that I'm going to have to figure out, but for the most part, the game's in my head. I just need to put it into the game engine. So this whole process has kind of just been stressful for that reason. I'm waiting for the day that Unity reverses its changes or makes adjustments that are much more reasonable, and I know that this has soured many people to Unity as a company, and I totally understand that and totally agree as well. But I just want to make my game, man. And at this point, like, this is the best way for me to make my game. So unless Godot does exactly what I need it to do in terms of importing characters, as of right now, I'm probably just going to continue making this in Unity, and that's a little bit disappointing. So this video was kind of a downer. I mean, it was a devlog. It was the first devlog of this series, and I'm sorry that you guys had to listen to me ramble about the frustrations of using Unity at a time like this. But there's hope for the future, I think. I'm going to try Godot, and I'll probably report back with what I find. And if I don't like Godot, I'm probably just going to keep using Unity. And I hope you guys are willing to stick around for the journey, even though I'm using a game engine that has fallen out of favor. I really am passionate about this game, and I just think Unity is right for me in the grand scheme of things. If you like this video, please leave a like. I'm sure there's a lot that people have to say, a lot of suggestions that people have to make. And realistically, if you have suggestions about Flax Engine or Unreal Engine for me, I've tried a lot of different things, but if you have suggestions, I'm open to hearing them. So you can do all that in the comments. And if you want to see more of these devlogs, if you want to see my progress, subscribe. And yeah, if you want to support me, right now the only way is on my Ko-fi. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have a Patreon. I was thinking about making one for this game, but with everything going on and with the lack of progress that I made this week, I just sort of feel a little dejected. So I hope you guys can understand, and I hope that you guys are at least excited about what I'm working on. Anyways, I guess I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Super trooper, super trooper, super trooper, and he sells soup.